There's just something about those early days of motorsport, isn't there? That raw feeling, the pioneers of speed.
Oh, absolutely. A completely different world.
And that's exactly where we're headed today. We're going deep on a specific car, one you can see at the Riga Motor Museum.
Yes, a fantastic museum. And the car itself, it's a 1924 Amilcar CGS. Really embodies that early spirit of competition.
Okay, 1924 Amilcar CGS. For someone listening who maybe isn't, a total vintage car nut, why this one? What makes it special in terms of early motorsport?
Well, it's interesting because it represents that moment when driving wasn't just about getting from A to B anymore. People started wanting more.
Right.
Performance.
Right. Cars were becoming more normal in the early 20s, weren't they? Like, more people actually own them, even in places like Latvia.
Exactly. The museum points this out. Ownership was growing globally.
Yeah.
And as soon as you have more cars, well, the urge to race kicks in, doesn't it?
Huh, yeah, I guess so. Mine's faster than yours.
Pretty much. And the museum's motorsports exhibit captures that excitement. Interestingly, while we're focused on this 24 CGS, they also have a later Amil car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one that actually did the Monte Carlo Rally in 1935. So you see the brand's progression into, proper endurance racing too.
Okay, that's cool context. But back to our 1924 model. Let's get into the details. What was under the hood, so to speak?
Okay, so the CGS, technically, it had an engine just over a liter. 173 cubic centimeters.
So pretty small, even for back then.
Relatively, yeah. Which suggests they were thinking about efficiency, maybe lightness. It put out about 35 horsepower.
35 horsepower, okay.
But here's the thing. Top speed, around 110 kilometers per hour.
Whoa, okay. 110 back in 1924. That must have felt incredibly fast.
Absolutely exhilarating, I'd imagine. And it was light, only 535 kilograms.
Wow, 535 kilos. That's tiny. That's lighter than almost anything today.
Exactly. And that lightness is key, really.
So hitting 110 kph with 35 horsepower and that low weight, what does that tell us about the engineering thinking?
It tells us they were clever. They were likely pushing the limits of engine tuning for its size. And like you said, that low weight was critical. Less mass to move,
Right. Makes sense. Easier to accelerate, easier to turn.
Precisely. Agility was probably a big focus. The museum's cars of the 1920s section gives context here. Latvia saw imports, sure, European cars too, but American cars like Fords and Chevys were common, often simpler, heavier perhaps.
So the Amil car was different, more specialized?
Likely, yes. Amilcar was French, and the CGS probably appealed to someone looking for a sportier feel. More driver-focused than your basic transportation.
So it fit into a landscape where you had the mass market cars and then things like this pushing performance.
Yeah, the 1920s were this explosion. Big companies forming, cars becoming part of the economy, but also this experimentation, finding niches. The museum calls it the origins of the automotive industry. Lots of rapid development.
And it's great that the Riga Motor Museum preserves this stuff. Founded in '89, reopened after renovations in 2016, really keeping that history alive.
Absolutely. Seeing this Amilcar CGS there, it's not just an old car. It's a direct link to that pioneering spirit.
Let's really try and picture it. 110-kilometer open cockpit, probably. Roads in the 1920s.
Yeah. Forget smooth highways. You're talking basic roads, maybe unpaved stretches, and safety. Minimal, really. Hitting that speed would have been a real thrill, maybe even a bit terrifying.
And that weight, again, 535 kilos. How would that translate to the driving experience beyond just speed?
It would feel incredibly direct, responsive, nimble. You'd feel everything through the steering wheel. For early racing or rallies on twisty, unpredictable roads, that kind of handling would be just as vital as raw power, maybe more so.
So even though 35 horsepower sounds tiny now, in that package on those roads, it really was part of that thrilling world of motorsports, as the museum puts it.
Exactly. It was pushing boundaries for its time. And seeing that later 1935 Monte Carlo Amilcar in the same museum, it just shows how that push continued year after year.
So this 1924 car, it's more than just a museum piece. It's like a snapshot of a really crucial moment.
Perfectly put. It captures that first flush of excitement about speed, the clever engineering starting to emerge. It connects directly to why we even have motorsport today.
And seeing it at the Riga Motor Museum, you can almost feel that connection. Makes you wonder what it was really like back then.
It really does.
Yeah.
And maybe that leads to a thought for you listening. When you consider the specs of this 1924 Amilcar, the small engine, the 110 kph, that super low weight, what aspects of engineering, or maybe just the sheer competitive spirit, do you think were most important back then for getting motorsport off the ground?
Hmm.
What can these early machines teach us about why we're still so fascinated with going faster, with pushing the limits?
That's a great question to chew on. Really makes you think. If this has sparked your interest, definitely check out the Riga Motor Museum's website. Or better yet, go see it in person. It's an amazing way to trace that long road to the car.